Hey, writer, if you're ready to level up, then buckle up. Get your pen and paper ready. It's time for another episode of the Art and Business of Writing podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the Art and Business of Writing podcast. I am your host, Chris Jones, where today I am joined by fundraising consultant and nonprofit coach, Patrick Belcher. Patrick Belcher instructs local nonprofit organizations on how to consistently raise money. His passion is to guide charities in developing a long-term strategy to gather resources that help them achieve their mission. Using a detailed evaluation process, major gift strategies, and planning, Patrick ensures nonprofits have the resources to make a difference. On several instances, he's helped these charities establish their first $100,000+ event. Patrick discovered his sales background applied to fundraising while working for the American Red Cross, where he far exceeded his fundraising goals. As a consultant, he has worked with local affiliates of national groups like Adult and Teen Challenge. He's also worked local addiction and recovery centers, organizations that support the arts, local private schools, and other groups focused on education. Learn more about Patrick and his 20-plus year track record as a nonprofit sales leader at pbjmarcom.net. And without further ado, here's Patrick Belcher. Hey, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, good afternoon.
So, hey, man, I love your bio. I want you to unpack your bio. Tell us more about yourself.
Well, after 20 years of professional sales, I thought that I could go back to my roots and start doing PR again. And I ended up, I started my own firm thinking that I could do PR and marketing. And I ended up working with a lot of fundraising campaigns and ended up working at the Red Cross. And that's actually how you and I met. And then while at the Red Cross, I discovered the value of my sales background in fundraising. I was doing relationship building and all the things that made me successful in sales for the Red Cross and in the fundraising. And I was crushing the numbers. I was raising more money than they had hoped for in the areas that I was responsible for. So when I left the Red Cross, I went back to my firm and focused strictly on nonprofits and teaching them fundraising strategy that was really just an adaptation of sales strategy. And as part of trying to market my firm and everything, I started writing blogs based on somewhat on my experience at the Red Cross, some on my experience with the clients that I was working with. And somehow, some way, somebody said to me, well, you should put all these in a book because they make a lot of sense. And again, I reconnected with you, and thanks to your wisdom and your guidance and being a little bit of a taskmaster, I can say that this book became a dream come true. And I can't thank you enough for that.
Oh, no, you're absolutely welcome. So with the nonprofits, what was it about nonprofits that really, drove you? You could have kind of focused on anything. I know you had success working with the Red Cross and doing very well with them. But what clicked and you said, man, I wonder if I can make this success multiply with other nonprofits?
Well, it was more understanding a couple things. One was the value of relationships. The other was understanding that there is a real strategy to this. It's not just, about understanding that there's opportunity everywhere. It's about connecting people with what your organization is offering as a mission, and it's about really creating a strategy or an activity model, as we used it in sales, because it is a numbers game, and it's understanding that if someone doesn't connect with your mission or isn't interested in supporting your mission at the time, which is okay, and that's going to happen. that there's 10 other people behind them that will connect with you and will want to support the mission of your organization. And understanding that it's not just about, um, to use the courting metaphor, about, um, asking somebody to marry you on the first date, but really kind of building those relationships and showing the difference that people make in your organization, and the fact that there are people that want to make that difference in the community, and really connecting with them and letting them understand and experience the impact that they make through your organization.
Okay. So in working with nonprofits, you wrote the book on it. So what's the one thing that I guess nonprofits need to understand about fundraising? Your book Fundraising Is, you've got multiple chapters that go into the various aspects of what fundraising is, but what's the one underlying thing that you've noticed in your work with nonprofits that they all, I don't want to use the word miss the mark, but they all should really understand at an organizational level?
Well, a it's one about being proactive versus reactive. A lot of nonprofits still think, well, we need money to do this, so we need to go out and ask a bunch of people, or the house is on fire, and if we don't raise $10,000 tonight, then we're not going to be able to keep our doors open. Or so it's about becoming proactive versus reactive, and it's about, when you start becoming proactive, it's about really laying out that plan so that everything kind of always works together. It's about understanding how many people you want to impact, or how many of whatever you want to produce, whether it's pounds of food that you distribute for a food bank, or um, number of people that you help that are homeless, or kids that you support in education, whatever it may be. It's understanding that everybody wants to do more than they did last year, and understanding what the costs are, and laying out that plan and communicating that, and helping people in the community understand how they can impact that. Because nonprofits are really kind of the solution to government, and that they see, most nonprofits have some garage type or church basements type story, where they saw a problem and a group of people got together and wanted to fix it, and they felt that they could fix it better and faster than anybody else. They just got to get a plan together, and it was driven by their hearts, which is wonderful, and that's why so many people are really good at fundraising, much better than they are at sales, because it is such a personal passion attached to it. But it's about understanding that, um, whether we're talking bake sales, galas, or asking for $100,000, you don't just go out and do it. You got to prepare everything, and you got to plan, and you got to say, this is what we want to raise, and this is what it's going to cost us to raise that. And you never want to enter something where you're going to spend a dollar to make a dollar. You want to spend a dollar to make $10 for this organization. So how do you do that?
Right. So in nonprofit fundraising, I know a lot of it, like you mentioned before, is just it's a relationship thing. How do you cultivate relationships in a nonprofit?
Relationships are extremely valuable in nonprofits, because people get involved with nonprofits, and the best people that get involved with nonprofits are the ones that get involved in many ways. Sometimes, whether that be donating or volunteering or serving on the board, or what other ever position that is. And the best nonprofits are the ones that cultivate and cross cultivate people, and really build you know solid relationships that are more than just somebody coming to an event, or somebody um, giving a one-time donation. They're the ones that understand the value of stewardship and cultivation in that relationship. And I mentioned this with sales, it's very transactional. You give this, you get this in return, whether we're talking about insurance or we're talking about safety equipment or we're talking about a car. With nonprofits, it's very much, you're asking people to give based on their affinity. And not everybody's always going to connect with your mission, and that's okay. But those that connect with your mission really do connect with your mission. And the more value that you give them, the more they're going to place value on their relationship with you. And that's in monetary ways, and it's also in being a conduit for your organization that brings in others. And that's some of the real value in relationships. It's not only in just the money that people give, but the way that they can connect you with the rest of the community.
All right, and that's a good segue to my next question, which is why should I care? And I think, and not in a callous way, but how does story play a big role in the sphere of nonprofits? Because people knock at my door all the time wanting me to donate money for maybe the Humane Society or some other cause, and then someone comes to me with this compelling story, and I'm like, take my money. So, because because that matters to, I think for me, being someone who's a storyteller at heart, that matters to me. Like, I want to know, man, tell me the story. Like, how important is that? How important is that aspect to fundraising?
Well, there's, and I really talk about this extensively in the book, is that as much as the many, many things that nonprofits do in the community, the number of people they help, the number of pounds of food they give away, the number of trees they've saved, whatever it may be, as much as those statistics are important in the nonprofit world as far as showing return on investment for donors, there's nothing more powerful than the statistic of one. And that could be one family, that could be one child, that could be one animal. Um, but it's really being able to tell the story where, as I sit here and you talked about the power of a compelling story, it's not the story of all the people they've helped. It's the story that one person, that whether you can see your daughter or your friend or one of your daughter's friends, or the neighbor down the street or a cousin in that story. That compelling story isn't because of the compelling story around what their mission. It's the compelling story around how you're able to transfer it and own it in your own life. And I think you would agree, if you think about all those compelling stories, it's because you found it somewhere in your own relationships.
Oh no, that's absolutely right. Like it has to resonate. I think that's the thing, is that when you, like you said, yeah, I think the power of one, you tell that one story about that one specific thing is like it gets it so dialed in that I have to pay attention to it. Versus like you say, like when I was a kid, I grew up and there was always those commercials. My mom would just badger me over at dinner time about the little kids in Africa. But
Right.
they always talk about all the multitudes of kids. I'm like, how in the world are you supposed to help a big multitude of people? I don't have enough money to do that. But then someone tells a story of one child and say, yeah, if you donate $10, one child will eat. I'll pay the $10 because that's one child. I can make a difference with $10 in my mind, but I can make a difference with $10 in like 10 million people. So I think that definitely speaks volumes there when you talk about just dialing into the one specific case.
Well, and something that I reference in the book, probably I think two or three times, is what's called the starfish parable.
Yeah.
And I'll share it quickly, but there's a boy walking down the beach, and there's all these starfish that have washed up on the shore, and he's picking them up and throwing them back into the ocean. And an old man sees them and sees all the starfish, and he walks up to the kid and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, I'm saving these starfish." And the man looks to him and says, "Well, there's no way you can save all of them." And the boy picks up one of the starfish, throws it back, and says, "Well, to that one, I made a difference." And, it's such a powerful parable that really just screams what the importance of storytelling is, especially when you're asking people to give based on their heart.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good story. That's a very good story. So with nonprofits, something else I wanted to ask you about nonprofits was expectation. Because we talked about relationship, we talk about story. Let's dive into expectation. I know people begin nonprofits. I think they, many times we have noble goals of I want to raise lots of money and help lots of people. But how important is one, tempering your expectations, and two, planning to the end? How do you coach people to do those two things though? Make sure you plan this thing all the way to the end so that there are no hiccups or disappointments, and two, just that you understand what you're getting into and temper those expectations so you're not thinking year one I'm going to go from being just a nonprofit without a name to becoming the juvenile diabetes foundation.
Well, gosh, I've never had that question asked to me so well. And it's such an important question because when I wrote this book, really I was writing it for boards and for new people coming into the nonprofit profession, or people stepping that have been in the profession for years and stepping into new roles, to really measure that expectation. Because in the nonprofit profession, the typical tenure of a fundraising professional is less than 2 years. And a big reason for that is because of un mismanaged expectations. And what I mean when I say that, Chris, is we've talked about how important planning and relationships are. And if there's never been planning and there's never been relationships past a transaction done for an organization, it takes time to do that. In fact, chapter 2 of my book is nothing but when you bring somebody in, how to set them up for success so that they can do that planning and build those relationships, in the first 3 to 6 months, understanding that there's not going to be significant money raised until then. Um, Especially if that's what you want to do. And it's not because you need to train them how to fundraise, it's because you need to train them how to fundraise for your organization. And if you're a new organization, you got to build that statistic of one. Who is that one person that you've helped out? How many times can you tell that story in a unique way so that it connects uniquely with other people? And it's, whether any organization, when you start out, there's uh, most new businesses fail because they undercapitalize. It's the same way with nonprofits. They took on this huge thing and didn't plan on how they're going to connect with the community. They just know that they're so passionate about creating a solution to whatever this problem is, whether it's bullying or any of those things. It takes a lot. And nonprofits, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but nonprofits have the third largest economic impact in our community, past retail and healthcare. And that's because not only do they, you know, create solutions and sustain the economic community around them by, connecting with the locals to fix these problems, but they also provide jobs and they also provide opportunity and they do all those things. And that takes a lot. I mean, you know, there was close to $440 billion given to nonprofits last year. That's huge. And that's a lot of responsibility. And, it takes time to really cultivate being able to function with that size of money.
Here's something I want to ask you about too with nonprofits. Like, in terms of fundraising, how should nonprofits handle donors? Because, and what I mean by that is, I've dealt with canvassers who come to my door and talk to me about the nonprofit they're very passionate about, and I'm willing to make a donation, but then they come back with, well, that's not quite enough. Can you give X amount of dollars, or can you give over X amount of period? Is a donation a donation a donation?
Well, no, again, you're asking some really great questions today. Thank you so very much. Um, you know, the book is Fundraising is Everything Done Before Asking for Money. And that is such a big part about it. It you don't just go out and start asking people for money. Asking for money is literally the tip of the iceberg. That's what you see above water. Fundraising is everything that's below the water. That huge mass. And so one, if they're going out there setting an expectation for people to give at a certain level or whatever, did they set up the presentation for that? Did they create what I call dollar handles? Explaining that with $25 we're able to accomplish this, or with $42 we're able to accomplish this, or if you'd rather give us $20 a month, $240 in a year will help us accomplish that. Have they identified those, created value for those amounts, and helped you choose the impact that you want to make? And again, going back to kind of the groups of people that I originally wrote the book for, um, did you really practice and prepare? The first chapter of the book, I talk about climbing Mount Rainier, and the guy talks about practice, planning, and preparation as the three P's. And he says most of the things that aren't done is the preparation, because preparation isn't just making sure you have long johns in your backpack. It's also about getting comfortable with walking at night and knowing what you can handle in your hands and all those things, and being able to listen for water. Same thing goes with fundraising. The thing that I think is most missed in fundraising is the practice. I can't tell you all I should take pictures every time I talk about role playing with my clients. The grimaces that I make would fill a Far Side book, if I'm dating myself a little bit there. Role playing is huge, and being able to identify the cues. And one of the things I'm talking about in my new sets of blogs is the value of a second question. Lots of people will say, well, what do you do? Or tell me about your organization. And you'll tell them about it, and then they'll move on to the next one. But if they sit there and ask you more, that's an opportunity to ask them how they want to engage further.
As someone who is donating money, yeah, I'd like to know, well, hey, well, what does my $10 do? Or what does my $25 donation do? Or wow, if there's a higher level where I can have more impact, yeah, I want to know that. And I like that you talked about how, like, yeah, everything is about, before asking for the money. So making sure that you're ready to ask for the money ahead of asking for the money. It's just a very important aspect, which takes me to my next question, which is relationship management. In your book, you go through how to manage relationships with donors, like, with the thank you notes. Like, give some of the tips that you offered in the book, and even things that you've learned since, just about how to effectively manage relationships with donors and prospects.
Well, so there's a lot of things. First of all, it's about creating relationships across the organization. So not that one person has a relationship with the donor, but a donor is able to connect with more people in the organization. The other thing is just, I kind of talk about the 2-to-1 rule for, every time you ask, there should be 2 times that you just share impact. That's important because donors don't want to feel like ATM machines. They want to feel like they're making a difference, and they want to know about the difference that they're making. So communicating with them regularly is important. And again, just kind of getting back to the planning piece, it takes a lot longer if you got to try and go through each donor and figure out how you're going to connect with them. If you have a plan in the beginning, I hate to do the kind of cliche dating. Most people have a plan A and a plan B when they go on a date. And if they know if it went well and if it didn't go well, and if it went well, they're planning on doing this. If it didn't go well, then they're going to handle it this way. It's no different in planning and stewardship and cultivation with donors. There are donors that literally the only reason why they donated to you is because Chris Jones asked them. It's not that they think you're a bad organization. It's just that kids' cancer isn't something that they connect with. They much rather help the cute puppy dogs down the street. And that's okay. But be willing to recognize that and be thankful that Chris Jones was willing to go out and ask. Maybe Chris Jones can either bring him back around, or Chris Jones will bring in 3 other people that you can connect with. It's about recognizing the value of the people that you have and making the most of them. One of the biggest buzzwords in the nonprofit world is donor retention. And unfortunately, even with the pandemic, donor retention is somewhere in the high 30s, low 40s. Target has a goal that 80% of their customers will come back within 30 days. For nonprofits, they're hoping that you'll give a second donation within a year, and they're surviving and they're hopping on that treadmill, as I call it, to constantly get new people instead of really focusing on the people that they have. So, I mean, it just comes back to relationships and really making the most. Once you've got somebody that has found value in you, doing everything you can to find value in them.
And so with the book, who is it catered for? And then should it be read together as a board where they learn the material together?
This book is without a doubt for any organization that is thinking about getting serious about major gifts. And major gifts, is interpretable by any organization, but typically it's $1,000 or more and getting a lot of those types of gifts versus, the groups that are very transactional, galas, events, $20 donations at a bulk. But those that want to get serious about major gifts and bring in somebody to help them get serious about major gifts, so hiring a fundraising professional. So that could be a board that's getting ready to hire an executive director, a board that's getting ready to hire a development director, an executive director that's getting ready to hire a development director, any group that thinks that they're in that transition. And then I strongly encourage that this book is the catalyst to a discussion about, just like the book says, fundraising is everything done before asking for money. Are we serious and are we ready to take this on? Understanding that this is a long-term commitment for us. It's kind of like, once you start down this path, you don't look backwards and try and fall back on what you've already done. You really try to propel yourself forward. And I'm really excited that inside the book, I have a super special link for those that have bought the book that gives you access to special resources, including a discussion guide for each chapter that, whether it's 2 of you or an entire board that are kind of going through this book, there's a discussion guide and there's even recommendations in there of, maybe 3 of you take on this part of fundraising and 3 of you take on this part of fundraising and then 3 of you take on this part of fundraising if you're getting this book as a board. So it's really targeted for those that are getting serious about fundraising. And then the flip side of that is the fundraising professional that is either getting ready to start a major gift program at an organization or is transitioning from one organization to another, because it helps them in how they can have those really important conversations with leadership about, let's set realistic expectations. How can we work together to help this organization grow and achieve its mission? There are some great tools in that link that's enclosed inside the book that I'm very excited to share that, based on my analytics, groups are taking advantage of. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to include those in the show notes. So lastly, Patrick, how can our audience reach you?
Well, so I'm available on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram under PB&J Marcom. You can find me online at pbandjmarcom.net or fundraisingiS.com. My email is real easy, patrick@pbjmarcom.net. I'm the PB, my son's the J, and nobody forgets about us because everybody loves PB&J sandwiches.
I love it. All right. Hey, Patrick, thank you for sharing about your book, Fundraising Is. And Patrick, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Chris. Again, you're an excellent interviewer. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we will see you on the other side.
How's that for inspiring? I hope you take action on one thing you learned in today's episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast and left a review on iTunes, I want to encourage you to do that too. Finally, be sure to visit chrisjonesinc.com to sign up for updates. Don't worry, I won't spam you. And we'll see you back here next week for another episode.